It was a cold, foggy evening in the small town of Ashwood. The streets were empty, and the only sound was the distant tolling of the church bell. Detective Henry Grayson sat in his dimly lit office, sipping on a cup of tea. His sharp eyes scanned the room, filled with dusty books, old case files, and a bronze bell that sat on his desk, a gift from his late father, who had also been a detective. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. It was Mrs. Eliza Carter, a wealthy widow, known for her love of antiques. She looked pale and shaken. "Detective Grayson, I need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "Something terrible has happened." Detective Grayson invited her to sit down. "Please tell me everything." Mrs. Carter took a deep breath. "Last night, my prized possession, a rare bronze bell from the Ming Dynasty, was stolen from my home. It's not just any bell. It's said to have a mysterious history. Legend has it that whoever possesses it will either gain great fortune or face terrible misfortune. I'm afraid the thief might be in danger, or worse, they might use it for something sinister." Detective Grayson leaned forward, intrigued. "Do you have any suspects?" Mrs. Carter hesitated. "There's only one person I can think of, my nephew, Victor. He's always been fascinated by the bell and has asked me to sell it to him several times, but I refused. He's been acting strangely lately, and I fear he might have taken it." Detective Grayson nodded. "I'll look into it. Where can I find Victor?" "He lives in the old cottage near the woods," Mrs. Carter replied. "But please, be careful. He's not the same boy I once knew." The next morning, Detective Grayson made his way to Victor's cottage. The fog had lifted, but the air was still chilly. As he approached the cottage, he noticed the door was slightly ajar. He knocked, but there was no answer. Pushing the door open, he stepped inside. The cottage was a mess, books and papers scattered everywhere, and in the center of the room, on a wooden table, sat the bronze bell. But something was wrong. Victor was nowhere to be seen, and the room felt eerily quiet. Detective Grayson examined the bell closely. It was intricately designed, with ancient symbols carved into its surface. As he touched it, he felt a strange vibration, as if the bell was alive. Suddenly, he heard a faint whisper, almost like a warning. "Who's there?" he called out, but there was no response. Just then, he noticed a piece of paper tucked under the bell. It was a note, written in hurried handwriting. "The bell is cursed. I tried to return it, but it's too late. Find the truth in the woods." Detective Grayson's instincts told him that Victor was in trouble. He quickly left the cottage and headed towards the woods. The trees were dense, and the path was overgrown, but he pressed on, following faint footprints in the mud. After what felt like hours, he stumbled upon an old, abandoned well. The footprints led right up to it. Peering inside, he saw Victor, unconscious but alive, lying at the bottom. "Victor, can you hear me?" Detective Grayson called out. Victor stirred and looked up, his face filled with relief. "Detective, thank goodness you're here. I didn't mean to take the bell, but I was curious. When I brought it here, something strange happened. I heard voices, and then I fell into the well. Please, you have to believe me, the bell is cursed." Detective Grayson quickly found a rope and pulled Victor to safety. As they sat by the well, Victor explained everything. He had taken the bell out of curiosity, but soon realized it was more than just an antique. It seemed to have a mind of its own, emitting strange sounds and vibrations. Detective Grayson knew he had to solve the mystery of the bronze bell. He returned to Mrs. Carter's home and examined the bell's history more closely. After hours of research, he discovered that the bell had once belonged to a secret society that used it in ancient rituals. The symbols on the bell were warnings, and the curse was real. It brought misfortune to anyone who stole it. In the end, Detective Grayson convinced Mrs. Carter to donate the bell to a museum, where it could be studied and kept safe. Victor apologized for his actions, and Mrs. Carter forgave him, relieved that the mystery was solved. As for Detective Grayson, he returned to his office, the bronze bell on his desk, now a reminder of the strange case. He poured himself another cup of tea, knowing that in the world of detective work, some mysteries were best left untouched. And so, the case of the bronze bell was closed, a tale of curiosity, danger, and the supernatural in the quiet town of Ashwood.